Ed. Welcome. Thank you all for joining me today. It's kind of almost humorous to think that I was thinking that, well, there isn't enough news. We won't need these Sunday Zooms, maybe once a month, certainly not every 2 weeks. At this point, boy, have I been proven wrong. Just proves there's no such thing as being a prophet in the Middle East these days relating to anything. Um, as you all know, here in Israel, we woke up to surprise. A few people up all night. The television correspondents were up all night covering the news, although there really wasn't any news live. To the rest, we woke up this morning around 7 o'clock with notifications that the United States had bombed the three nuclear facilities in Iran, and warnings, stay home, that all of the different dispensations that have been given in the last couple of days to loosen up the economy a little bit were all canceled for today. And we're expecting some sort of massive Iranian response to the attack. I'll get to the attack, to what the United States did in a minute. But here, um, that response came around 7:30, I think it was. I had once again taken out our dog for a walk. Didn't get all that far when the alarms went off that there was an imminent attack. This attack lasted longer than previous attacks. The Iranians staggered their barrages a little bit. So there was a barrage of 20, followed by a barrage of 5. And so the whole time that we spent in the shelters was probably closer to 35, 40 minutes, uh, give or take, than the usual slightly shorter period of time. The Iranian attacks basically followed the statistical norms of what we've had until now. It seems 3 missiles got through, one to northern Tel Aviv, to the other side of the Arcon region, one of the early areas that were first built up in the 1950s, so very old buildings. And the result of the missile striking there was devastating to the structures, but Israelis have gotten really good at following instructions at this point. People don't, if there was the event, the Yemenite missiles from time to time. I think towards the end of that period, people were beginning to say, what's the big deal? I don't have to worry about it. Nobody takes that position when it comes to the Iranian missiles. Everybody goes to shelters or to safe rooms. No one's on the street. Israelis who are not known for following instructions all follow instructions when it comes to this, because everybody takes this very, very seriously. So at any rate, a lot of damage in that area, but thankfully no loss of life. A number of people were injured. A second missile landed in Nes Ziona, which is a suburb to the south of Tel Aviv, to the south and a little bit to the east. There, the rocket had a direct impact on a private house, which was destroyed in totality, and was right next to a nursing home. Once again, people followed instructions. The people in the house that was destroyed in total um, came out on mild injuries. I'm afraid one of the dogs was seriously injured. I'm not sure what the result is. He was taken to the dog hospital. And a number of people in nursing homes suffered minor injuries. And there was a further falling in Be'er Yaakov, I believe it was. I did not hear any reports of any serious injuries there as well. There were reports, and there was, in fact, a missile that was downed in Haifa again. But in this case, it was not a missile from Iran. It was one of our interceptors that seems to have either gone off course or whatever it was and landed in a residential area, causing a fair amount of damage and some injuries. Again, none of them fatal. So thankfully, the sum result of the initial Iranian counterattack or response to the American attack was a number of buildings have been destroyed. And I won't say that it's not significant, but one of those buildings was about to be destroyed anyway. It was part of the plan that Tel Aviv has, where a building gets destroyed, the tenants get new apartments, and it's paid for by the builder, who gets to sell the additional apartments he manages to build because he's building a much bigger building. So that building was already empty, thankfully. But there were other buildings there that were destroyed with people who were living in them. So there are more people now unhoused, shall we say, in the Tel Aviv metro area. Unfortunately or thankfully, however you want to look at it, there aren't any tourists in the country at the moment, so the hotels are pretty empty. And while the hotels have been full earlier part of this war with people from the northern border and the people from the Gaza border, they've all thankfully gone home at this point. So the hotels are available for a new wave of internal refugees, which are people whose homes are no longer livable. The government has a strange idea that these people are going to find rental housing very quickly. They'll pay for hotels for a couple of days or a week, and then people will find rental housing. It shows how disconnected these people are from what the reality in Tel Aviv is. Finding rental housing has always been difficult, certainly particularly difficult at the moment. Those people who I put in, Sograim in quotation marks, lucky enough to live, let's say, in Tel Aviv, the Tel Aviv municipality really does a really good job in taking care of them. Um, it's a wealthy city and it's a well-run city, and who are homeless in Tel Aviv get taken care of by the city. The city will at some point figure out how to get back the money from the national government. But in the meantime, the city takes care of its residents and does a good job, which is very much the story of Tel Aviv. At this point, the expectations are the Iranians will continue attacking us. I should say that this morning's attack was supposed to be much larger, but the Israeli Air Force managed to destroy a number of the missiles on the launching pads. So they're able to destroy some of them. The Iranians really do seem to be having a real significant problem getting enough uh, missiles to be launched. They do not have enough launching pads left. Israel has been systematically destroying them. Today's attacks came from eastern and central Iran, not from western Iran, which is closer to us. Um, and so Israel destroyed pretty much everything that was in western Iran in terms of missile sites. And today, I believe, was concentrating on central Iran. The longer flight for Israeli pilots to get there, but it's also a longer flight for the missiles to get here, which also increases the chance that some of them are just not going to make it. And that's what's happened a number of times as well. They have been sending cluster bomblets on some of the missiles. It's not at all clear what's happening, but some percentage of these missiles are releasing teeny cluster bombs. Um, the cluster bombs do not seem to be going off. As a matter of fact, we had a excuse me, we had a cluster bomb that was found literally down the block from us, no more than 75 meters from our house. People found the cluster bomb. Of course, the police came. They closed off the neighborhood. They the sappers from the police came, and eventually they removed it I think they used the robot to put it into one of these trucks and took it away. But the whole neighborhood was closed off probably for about 2 hours. And literally, the police line was be outside our window, basically. So these clusters are some sort of weaponized piece of metal. It's not exactly sure what in terms of they don't seem to explode, which is a good thing. In other words, cluster bombs, theoretically, what happens with a cluster bomb in theory is it throws off a lot of additional small bomblets, and those bomblets go off. This seems to be throwing off just additional explosive material or explosive items, but the items themselves do not seem to be exploding. I don't think we've had any reports of any of them exploding. Maybe some of them have and hasn't been reported, but I can say with certainty that the one that landed near our house did not explode and was eventually removed safely. So um, that was their initial counterattack. Like I said, the expectations are they're going to continue to attack. The numbers of their attacks have been quite limited, to say the least. The numbers have gone way down since the beginning uh, since the beginning, and each day they seem to have less and less. So we're somewhat optimistic that their numbers are decreasing. There were these reports last week. I'm not sure who leaked them and why they leaked them, is that Israel was running out of interceptors. I think it's an absolute fact that if Iran fired 100 missiles a day at us, we would run out of interceptors in a week or two. Probably, not completely, but probably. However, there's two problems with that. A, thankfully, they're not firing 100 missiles a day. They're firing maybe 20 missiles a day. And that's number one. Number two, it's not only our Chetz 3, which is the best of our interceptors that are doing the interception. The American THAAD systems are working, not quite as effective. America also has at least two at this point, and maybe even more, Aegis cruisers that are sitting off the coast of Israel. The Aegis cruisers are equipped with anti-missile systems, and they're also been integrated in the missile defense system. So we're not relying only on our own missiles. We're relying on a whole cadre of missile systems. And I guess that the key, either some computer or some person, I assume it's a computer at this point, but maybe it's a person, is deciding what system should intercept what missile based on its direction, based on where it's possibly going to hit, based on the abilities of the various
No,
systems.
no, I'm just watching my.
So I don't think that will not be our problem. I don't think we'll run out.
Really?
I think they're losing more
You're leaving already?
launchers every single day than we're firing interceptor missiles. You have to understand the fact that the Israeli Air Force has complete
Maggie?
air superiority. Not even superiority is not the right word, by the way. People use the word air superiority. It means that
Okay.
you're superior to your
Okay.
opponent in the air. No, this is not superiority. This is complete control. There's nothing in there's nothing on the whole system that in nothing that the Iranians can do at this point generally. That doesn't mean there won't be a shot they'll succeed or something terrible will happen, but they have
Mhm.
nothing really at this point to stop
Well,
our Air Force in their when
so
they're
when are you getting on a
attacking
plane?
at this point, which beyond the fact that it allows us to attack anywheres, it allows us to maintain an
All
intelligence presence over the skies of
right, trying.
Iran 24/7.
All right, I'll try
It's
and call
not
you.
planes, it's large drones. We have these very
Love you.
large drones that just sit there, and they sit there over different parts of Iran, and they do a good job in terms of seeing whatever's going on in Iran at any given point. So, where does the American attack? Let's go back to the American attack a moment and talk about that. Let's first talk about it tactically, and then we'll go to strategically. Tactically, once again, I have to give Trump credit. He's a great liar, and for good or for bad. And for good, he certainly fooled people again. 14 days. 14 days obviously means whatever it means. But in this case, it meant 2 days. The same way that previously, when he talked about the possibility of an Israeli attack, again, he was lying about that as well. So that's number one. Number two, they engaged um, in deception by sending a number of B-2 bombers out of Missouri heading towards Guam. The idea being when they got to Guam, they'd be in place for an attack against Iran at some point in the future. It was really almost humorous last night. We were talking about what's going on here. Every 5 minutes is another notification from an Israeli media source and then American media sources how B-2 bombers are on the way to Guam. And it was literally the most covered item in the news last night. And all that was a deception. They were on the way to Guam, but in the meantime, seven bombers departed in the opposite direction and headed across the Atlantic and across the Mediterranean and came in and attacked Iraq from the other side. Iran from the other side. At some levels, this deception wasn't even necessary. There was nothing the Iranians could do to stop the bombers. I doubt even in a normal situation, the bombers were accompanied by enough fighter bombers that were working to suppress any potential dangers that existed. But beyond that, because the Israeli Air Force had made the area sterile from anti-aircraft missiles, they really had absolutely uh, no possibility of anything attacking them. Plus, these are stealth bombers. B-2 is a stealth bomber, which means it can't be seen on radar. There is discussions that the Russians might have something that, under certain circumstances, might might notice it, but I guarantee you the Iranians certainly don't. So there really was nothing to really be concerned about. They bombed three targets. Um, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs said about an hour ago, the full bomb assessment has not been done. But what seems to be the fact is they came in and they once again attacked the Natanz site, which we had attacked previously, which we had damaged. And the American attack finished the job and totally destroyed the Natanz site. The same with the Isfahan site. It seems, again, this is unclear, that they were attacking where they think or thought there was some amount of the enriched uranium that had been taken and was being hidden in this plant. According to most sources, that plant has been totally destroyed as well. And the question of Fordow is a big open question. The general consensus is it was heavily, heavily damaged. It wasn't destroyed completely. And that will take time to find out. The Iranians will claim that nothing was done. It's all fine and well. The pictures show that there's no way in or out from it at the moment, and clearly, uh, major holes have been made in the mountain where bombs went down. How much destruction that caused inside the mountain, we do not know. The Americans might have a better idea in a day or two. We might have a better idea in a day or two. But overall, the involvement of the U.S. in this attack has two major effects. One, of course, the physical effect. The physical effect, again, it was able to destroy things that are more difficult for us, particularly Fordow. The other two we could have gone back to 6 times and eventually destroyed it completely. But Fordow was something that was, unless we sent in ground troops, which is what people here were expecting to happen, quite honestly, because we had done something similar in Syria. If you remember about, I guess it was a couple of weeks before the end of the war with Hezbollah, we sent in commando troops to an underground facility in Syria being used by Hezbollah to produce weapons. And the facility was deep underground. Our Air Force was not able to destroy it from the air. So we sent in commandos who went in, took control of the facility, and then blew it up from the inside. Most observers here were expecting something similar to happen in Fordow if the United States decided not to engage. It was possible. It most likely would have been successful. But of course, any sort of ground operation where you have to transport your troops 2,000 miles away, and I'm sure these same troops have been this far before, but not so publicly, is a very dangerous operation. And while you have command of the air and everything else, it was something that the Israeli army was not thrilled to have to do, let's put it that way. But I think that was clearly the plan. Thankfully, it was unnecessary, at least for this facility. Um, so, so the Fordow plant, I think, is out of operation. Does that mean the Iranian nuclear program is out of operation? Of course not. They probably have some of the enriched uranium somewheres. They cannot at the moment convert it into a warhead. The facility to do that has been destroyed. They could possibly create a dirty bomb with it. They will eventually be able to create it into a warhead if left to their own devices. And of course, that is the big question here. It's always the big question here is what's the end strategy? How do we end this war? Easy enough to start a war. It's always much more difficult to end a war. That's a general problem. When you start a war, do you know how to end the war? We certainly have failed miserably when it comes to Gaza and that. But hopefully we know a little better here. I do not know for sure. Um, but the end scenario, there are a number of end scenarios. One end scenario is a new agreement. The Iranian government realizes it has no choice. It takes Trump's threat seriously, that if they don't agree, there'll be more follow-up of one kind or another. Not to mention, their pain threshold is only so strong. As every single day that goes by, they're losing more and more of their army, whatever's left of their army, their air force. it's being destroyed by Israel systematically. If no, if no one is pressuring us to end this, we can keep on doing this for quite a while. Now, there's stories that our Arab neighbors want it to come to an end. The Europeans would like to see it come to an end, but at the moment, as long as the Americans don't tell us to bring it to an end, there's no rush to bring it to an end. Um, and of course, we're paying the price uh, here in terms of missile attacks. But the last few days, thankfully, and I don't have a wooden desk; it's a Formica desk, I think. So, but knock on wood, there haven't been any fatalities. And as long as there aren't any fatalities, it's something that we can afford to continue. I think part of the reason there were fatalities in those first few days is people didn't take it seriously enough. And not everybody went to where they're supposed to go. Um, not everybody went to the shelter. Not everyone went to the safe rooms. After those first group of fatalities, everybody paid, strong attention and has done it. Uh, and it means going right away. When you got that pre-warning, even though you have 9 minutes, I think in our building, except for someone who just came back, everybody is in the shelter within the first 3 minutes or 4 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes before the actual sirens go off here in Tel Aviv. We take it very seriously. And I think most of Israel take it very seriously. I'm coming back to what I said at the beginning. So as long as people take it very seriously, um, I think that this can go on as long as necessary. And what does that mean? At some point, I think the regime will cry uncle. It's going to be very difficult for them. It's very difficult, the question of their honor. And once again, the thing that people don't want to realize, and this is an inherent problem, is that the Iranian regime is a religious regime. Its ideology is religiously motivated. And it's religious motivation that says that the Shiites must control the Middle East, and more than that, and that anything else less than that is a failure religiously for them. And I don't think Western analysts uh, really take that enough into consideration. It's the same problem with Hamas, by the way, that we think about our um, our fight with Hamas as merely a fight between us and the Palestinians. And that was true with the Palestinian Authority, and that's why the Palestinian Authority agreed to some sort of peace with us. We'll leave aside, and I don't get into the arguments whether it's real peace or pieces or whatever. Leave that part aside. But they're willing ideologically and in every other way to say that we're going to reach peace with the Israelis. We're willing to talk about dividing the land, end of conflict. Didn't work out. There's some problems. I'm not suggesting they weren't, but they ideologically were able to do that because to the Palestinian Authority, it's a secular fight between Palestinians and Jews over land. Land disputes can be resolved because problems with religion, with Jerusalem, and things make things more difficult, and refugees, they all make it more difficult, but they're all resolvable in one way or another because logic is the key factor. Unfortunately, with the Iranian regime, they're religious fundamentalists. With Hamas itself is a religious organization. They're religious fundamentalists. And then we have our religious fundamentalists on our far right. When you deal with religious fundamentalists, it's very, very difficult. And the question is, will the fundamentalism of the Irani regime at the moment be what will determine their policy? Or will they make the realistic decisions that says, we'll make a deal with Trump, we will agree to the terms of not enriching his plan for a consortium so we can get enriched uranium through the consortium. That's good enough. We'll be partial owners of it, and therefore our honor will be taken care of. Can they agree to that? I do not know. I hope they can, because that's the way we will end this at this point. Can they give up on destroying Israel? Rhetorically, probably not, at least not this generation. But who knows what a future generation will bring. Um, 2 words or 3 words about Gaza. Can't not discuss Gaza. First of all, because the hostages. It's so easy to forget the hostages amidst all that's going on right now. Obviously, they're not the top of the news, but thankfully they came up in the news today because the army, together with the security services, was able to retrieve three bodies of one of a soldier and two of civilians that were killed on October 7th and taken to Gaza. They were retrieved and they were identified today. So now there are 50 hostages, 20 assumed alive and 30 unfortunately assumed dead in Gaza. We can't continue to ignore them. This is the perfect time to declare victory for Netanyahu to say, look at I've changed the Middle East. We've eliminated the Iranian threat. Now I can make a deal with Hamas who's weakened, and then we can go through a deal that will give someone else control of Gaza in an interim period. It's not perfect, but it'll get back our hostages, which is very important to say the least. In the meantime, the food aid program continues to have problems with it. Palestinians continue to seem to die there in one way or another. It's not clear who's firing on them, to be quite honest with you. It's not at all clear. I heard one military correspondent ask a different one today, who's firing? And he said, I don't really know. I think it may be the Israelis, but it may be the militias, maybe Hamas. It's not at all clear what is going on there. It's out of sight, out of mind, and that's terrible because we shouldn't allow this to be out of sight and out of mind. But I guess that's sort of almost natural considering what's happened in terms of our war with Iran over the last 10 days. So here's where we are 10 days in. I have to say something else, admit. As people know, I'm not one of President Trump's uh, great fans, but I'm not sure we would have seen this with a different president at this point. That's a reality, for better or for worse. As much as there's so many things I dislike about what he does domestically in terms of process and everything else. Also, we're also clearing who our friends are or who our enemies are when we're seeing some of the resolutions being put forward by AOC and Bernie Sanders, etc. Uh, again, um, it's it's not understandable. It's understandable why people are concerned about the Palestinians, right? Even though the Palestinians and the Hamas, excuse me, Hamas does all these terrible things and kills gays and all these other things that liberals should be up in arms about and treats its women like chattel. But okay, but they're poor Palestinians. They are a clearly a small they're clearly the weak group. The far left has always been more concerned about the weak than about who's right. And I can understand that to some extent, a very minor extent, but I can understand that. But the Iranians, it's a big country. It's a country 10 times the size of our country. They killed gays. They force women, they limit what women can do. That's the understatement. They force them to wear hijabs and they attack people who don't. All the things that liberal society should hate. And yet, so many of the liberals in America, the far left in America, have come out in defense of Iran. It's disappointing. It's sad. I understand some of the deep reasons for it, but it doesn't excuse it. Okay, we're halfway through. I'll open up for questions. Please try to raise your hand. I'll hopefully call on you. If not, my wife will scream at me. So, Paul,
Yeah, can you hear me?
welcome back. We've missed you for the last two times.
Okay, so I understand the importance of knocking out the missile launch sites, um, but I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are some other very big political slash military targets, IRGC bases, factories, even parliament type things that really get at the power of the regime, and we don't hear about those being hit. I'm just curious why.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. First of all, you have to look at what Israel's priorities were in this war so far. Priority number one were the nuclear sites. So the first night or the first attacks were on two different sites. One of them, the site convert uh, where they convert the fissionable material into what's called metal. The metal they where they convert into metal that can be then used in a weapon. That site was hit first because the concern was that they could turn it into a weapon. That was the first thing that was hit the first night. They also hit the site where they thought they would be able to do the enrichment from 60% to 90%. They hit that site. So they went and hit first the very key nuclear sites. They also went after and killed as many of their scientists as possible. Almost all the top scientists in the nuclear program have been eliminated, uh, most of them at the very, very beginning. Second and third, the ballistic missiles. The fact that I'm sitting here, that it's been now 11 hours since the last time they fired missiles, and the time they fired missiles, it was almost a day. It was a day after they had fired previously. Says the fact that the Israeli Air Force has been extremely effective at attacking missile sites. That's important because if this morning's missile barrage had been 50 missiles and not 25 missiles, that means statistically at least three more sites would have been hit by missiles. Who knows who would have been wounded and killed? Plus, getting back to the discussion I mentioned earlier, that issue of running out of interceptors would be much more acute. We've been hitting sites of the regime, but we haven't gone all out against the regime at this point. The United States certainly is not. The United States is against regime change. We all know that. Regime change is a terrible word in America. And I think Israelis, we would love regime change to take place. And I think if there's any sign of it amongst the Iranian people, we'll do all we can to help. But it's not at all clear what we can do. I think as the days go on, we're hitting more and more regime sites. I wish we had a way of if we could automatically release all the political prisoners in Iran, that would go a long way towards bringing about regime change. But those are things that may be beyond our abilities at this point. So I'm sure there are other sites. But again, someone once said that Iran at this point is like a candy store for the Israeli Air Force. The sites everywhere. And the decision has to be made. What is the priority in terms of hitting? Priority, of course, continues to be missile sites that are ready to fire on Israel. And then they, consistently go after other sites, other Iranian planes on the ground. 2 days ago, it was F-14s. Yesterday, the day before, it was helicopters. Last night, it was F-5s. So they're continuously going after additional sites, different additional places. We have not hit significant economic sites yet. We have not hit the oil processing plants, the oil ports that would put the oil production out of production, would end it. I think part of the reason we're doing that is we're trying to put something else to threaten them with. In other words, if you take out everything now, then what they have left, it's not at all clear. So we can use the threat of attacking certain other things to our advantage. But again, I'm not the person choosing targets, so I don't know.
So let me just, if you don't mind, let me just follow up something. The other day in the podcast, you pointed out that little by little by little, even if there were a Trump desired nuclear agreement with Iran, they would cheat, and the fatigue of the inspectors would give way, and sooner or later, it would take a while, but Iran could get back to where they would like to be. Just given the dynamics of inspector versus inspected, can Israel really live without regime change?
Yeah, I mean, we've lived all these years. Look, I think we can. I don't think we can bring about regime change. I don't think we can. Um, I think regime change has to come from the Iranian people, and we have no control over whether Iranian people will do what's necessary to bring about a regime change. Will it be much better? Yes, but again, it's something we can't control, and so we can hope for the best. We can only create the circumstances where it can happen. Margot.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you. How about the mine bombs that they want to put in the Strait of Hormuz? Don't you think they should be going after those two in the event that it becomes a larger war? Tell me about that, the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. So that's one of the things. There was a report that the Iranian parliament has approved mining the Straits of Hormuz. It now has to go to the Supreme Iranian Security Council to do it. There'll be playing with fire if they do, because they'll be crossing that line in terms of President Trump. The U.S. and all the Arab allies have some pretty advanced anti-mine ships. If um, if we see them actually doing them, usually mines are dropped by ships. I think there's probably some ability to mine from the shore, but I don't think it'll be very effective. If we see ships dropping mines, I think they'll be attacked either by most likely by the United States. I think they could be successful in closing the straits for a short period of time. I don't think they'll be effective for a long period of time. Um, the reality, look, on one hand, the Houthis managed to close off that area for a very long period of time. But Iran is much more susceptible to being counterattacked than the Houthis. The Houthis are basically a band of criminals who have some sort of army with missiles. Iran is a real country and with real needs and everything else like that. I think it would be a bit suicidal for them to try to mine the Straits of Hormuz. I think the pushback will be strong. But again, we don't know. We don't know what the Iranians are going to do. Right now, they claim they consider Israel as America's biggest base in the Middle East, and so therefore Israel is going to be their target more than anything else. Is that really what's going to happen? Who knows? Who knows? Again, the only thing that's less understandable in the mind of President Trump is the mind of Khomeini. Well, on some levels, it's even more understandable because we know what Khomeini wants is our destruction. But in any case, what he's going to decide tactically is an unknown. Um,
Thank you.
Denise, good. I was asked here to discuss if they could have moved part of the nuclear program out of Fordow beforehand. The answer is clearly they could have. Have they done it? I don't know. What I will say is that the level that our intelligence seems to have on where every nuclear scientist is located and where all sorts of different parts of their programs are at any given time, I have to assume that we also have knowledge if they moved it and where they moved it to. Again, it's only an assumption. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but based on the level of intelligence and our ability, even today, I'm not sure who we killed, but we killed a major figure again today in downtown Tehran. Our ability to keep on doing this, keep on knowing where people are and killing them in their homes, their hotel rooms, wherever they might be, says to me, we still have a great deal of real-time intelligence of what's going on in Iran. And that real-time intelligence, I'm sure, relates also to if they've moved the fissionable material, and if yes, where they moved it to. So we can't be sure, but I'm at least optimistic that we've been following it, then we know what to do. Again, there's no guarantees. You never know until maybe it's too late what's going to happen, but let's hope for the best. Brian.
Yeah, I wonder what you might make some comment on the sort of political impact in Israel. And I'm sure that there's kind of very, very high levels of support, but do you have any sort of view and sense of the politics of it as things evolve over the next days and weeks, basically in terms of the coalition, in terms of opposition politics and potential of Netanyahu calling an election at some point relatively soon on the back of this? What's your kind of sense of where that's all heading?
Okay, so obviously there's support wall to wall amongst Jewish Israelis. It's probably 80, 90 something percent. I don't think there's much disagreement between the different parties, whoever they may be. The parties are pretty united in their support of what's going on. Political effect is a little bit unknown. The initial polling that came out, I think it was Thursday night, so there was already quite a number of days into the war, showed um, that Netanyahu was more popular, but only at the expense of Ben-Gvir. In other words, there wasn't any movement amongst the people who opposed the government to support the government. The people who were supporting Ben-Gvir, who said, oh, Netanyahu isn't strong enough, I'm going to support Ben-Gvir, left Ben-Gvir and went to Netanyahu. Um, it seems to me that the feelings about Netanyahu are so baked in this country, whether you support him or whether you oppose him, that there's almost nothing he could do that can change your views. It doesn't make a difference how many reports come out and say that he was responsible for X, Y, and Z. No one care. I mean, we all care, but its supporters will all say it's politically motivated, and it doesn't make a difference how great our military successes are, our political successes. Um, those people who oppose him will continue to oppose him. And that's the reality. Look, there is no question in my mind. Kol hakavod to him for making the decision, going after something that he believed in his whole life. This has been his item. It's been his issue since he was UN ambassador, basically, in the 1990s, 80s, 90s. He's been talking about this. Um, and he successfully brought about an attack and brought about the United States to join that attack. Absolute success in terms of this. It doesn't take away from the fact that the whole rest of the government is being mismanaged tremendously. I mean, just think about for the most basic thing that we for the last 3 years, 5 years, the Controller General keeps on coming out with reports that there aren't enough safe rooms and there aren't enough shelters and everything else, and yet nothing was done. And we went to this war knowing that. And yes, it was day before yesterday, there was a decision by the government to allocate 100 million shekels to build more shelters and to fix the shelters that exist. Well, guys, you knew you were going to war. It wouldn't have been a big surprise. We've been at war for a while to take that 100 million shekels that you gave to something else stupid in the last 6 months or year and put it towards getting more shelters. It's one of the small things. It's just the fact this government does not run well at all in any area other than the military. Um, none of the director generals of almost any government ministry, except the ones run by Shas, who for whatever reason they seem to take actual people to run them. The Ministry of Health, for instance, is well run, but everything else is run by political hacks who the ministers bring along. And Netanyahu takes no interest. If it's not defense, he doesn't care. And well, he's prime minister. He's not defense minister. And I'm sure someone else would be happy to be prime minister and appoint him defense minister. But he's not. He's defense minister, anything more than anything else. I heard that Claude has his physical hand up. So Claude.
Okay, I'm going to try to focus on Iran. First of all, without radio-free Iran, it's hard to help with regime change.
It was brought back.
Excuse me?
It was brought back last week.
They brought it back last week. Okay. Also, just so you know, Mark, I don't know what you know or don't know, but the substantial number of trucks have been in Fudro the last 10 days since you started bombing Iran, and they've moved a substantial amount of something. So you're talking about 25, 30, 50, 100 trucks were there. And
we don't know exactly. There are
oh,
some.
No, there's satellite. Okay, you
Right.
don't.
No,
I'm
no. I mean,
sorry.
I saw the satellite imagery. We don't know how many trucks were actually, what
I
was
don't.
inside of
I'm
them.
just mentioning. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing them out
Oh,
there.
we know that is a problem. Absolutely.
Okay. And also,
But-
you're praising what happened with Mr. Netanyahu, but if I remember, he's the one that pushed Trump, I think, and AIPAC and so
Oh,
on.
without a doubt, Trump. Listen, there's no question that
Wait, to
to move out
leave
of
the
the
JC.
yeah, absolutely. That was the most disastrous decision alone for no other reason. He should never have been elected again. No question about it.
No. No, I'm talking about 2017, leaving the
Yeah,
JCPOA.
2017, leaving the JCPOA. There's not a question. There was also a report, and this goes back to 2015, if I'm not mistaken. I think that came out yesterday that that then when Obama wanted to go to the agreement, he offered Israel, whether it was the bombers or the bombs, in order to take out Fordo if it became necessary. And Netanyahu preferred to go to Congress and complain as opposed to taking the bomb and bombers. So there's no question that for political reasons, Netanyahu did a lot of terrible things and to get us in this situation where we didn't necessarily have to be in this situation. And there's no
Okay.
question that leaving the agreement in 2017 was a big mistake.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
You're the greatest guy. I really appreciate it. But I'm going to interrupt you because Strait to Hormuz, there's nothing's going to happen there because the Iranians are in Moscow as we speak. They're meeting with the Chinese in the next 2 or 3 days. And they're going to go dark. After they do a couple of things against Israel, Iran is going dark. And I'm telling you this from listening to Vali Nasser and Richard Haas and the concerns of Mario Grassi this morning. I know nothing, but if they go dark, Israel has bigger problems.
Okay. The only thing I will
What's your
say,
opinion?
my opinions, I don't know. I don't tend to be a prophet. I
I'm not a
don't.
prophet.
No, I'd say even making those, you can tell me what happened, and we can discuss what happened. To know what's going to happen, I've discovered that no analyst really knows what's going to happen. That may go dark, but we may have that Khomeini has a fit tonight and decides he can't allow this to keep on going on, and we have to attack the Americans because he promised to attack the Americans. That could happen. There are lots of possibilities. And Iran's going dark doesn't mean we're not going to keep on attacking them at the moment. Unless they come to an agreement, we're not going to stop attacking.
But without inspectors, you're not going to know where they're going
Well,
with their
well, again,
enrichment.
it depends.
Look at how much enrichment's gone on in the last 10 years.
Well, we know
Look
it's been going
at
on.
centrifuges.
We've known it's been going on. We know what's been going on there. We have agents, I'm sure, in all sorts of places. We have no idea where, about where and when, but we have agents clearly everywhere in Iran. So we know what's going on. What we can do about it, that's always a question.
Okay.
Again, look, I'm not, uh, let's put it this way. Wonderful world has not come yet, but it's still a little bit better than it was 10 days ago in terms of long term. Nancy.
Hi, thanks. Two quick points. I did see an interview with the head of the IAEA this morning, and he mentioned that one possible blowback from all this would be if Iran decided to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which he said would be an extremely dangerous, destabilizing move for them. That's one. And secondly, just in terms of Netanyahu, we all know he fancies himself very Churchillian. And I like to think about this after World War II, after Churchill shepherded Great Britain through World War II, in the very next election, they dumped him.
Right. Well,
So,
someone made that point. If he eliminates the great threat of Iran, why do we need him anymore? Let's get someone who'll deal with the economic problems and poverty and everything else because there is no great security threat. Yes, it's some Israeli observers who clearly made that point. It's a hope. What can I tell you? Both sides that we have no threat anymore, and that since there's no more threat, thank you. You've done your job. You're old enough to retire. Go on a speaking tour. Make a deal for your court cases, and leave us all alone. Very possible. Richard.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for doing this again, Mark. It's really something I look forward to every couple of weeks. I have a question about any agreement that we had with respect to Iran's nuclear program, or we may get. I mean, what is that actually worth?
Okay.
I
Well,
mean,
okay. So let's look back at it. The JCPOA was, by all accounts, being kept by the Iranians. Neither the Israeli intelligence, the American intelligence, the British intelligence, nobody found that the Iranians were cheating on that. The idea of a deal would be such that number one, first of all, the enriched uranium that's currently there would have to leave the country immediately. Number two, they would not be allowed to enrich any more uranium inside the country. They could get the 3.5% or whatever they need a um, for a civilian nuclear program from outside the country, and there would be inspectors that would inspect whatever sites would be left. That would be the idea. The Iranians would have the incentive to keep to the agreement, number one, because they don't want to be bombed again, because it's quite clear that that technology is not up to the technology of the West, and certainly not up to the Israeli technology, which will not stand still, mind you. Wherever it stands today, the Arrow 3 interceptor is basically 15, 18-year-old technology at this point. And I think it went into service about 5 years ago, which means the design was 10, 15 years ago. So um, I assume that we're busy working on the Arrow 4. I have no inside knowledge, but just based on the logic, we'd be busy working on Arrow 4. We're working on the laser systems. So whatever else the Iranians have up to plan on doing, they don't really want to take us on again. I don't think. So that's why I think it would work. And plus, of course, the financial incentives. part of any deal would be removing the sanctions against the Iranians, which is a problem in of itself because that means the um, that the Iranians can get more money, theoretically supply some of the terrorists, but that has to be part of the deal too, that they don't supply terrorists um, once they get back some of their money. So I don't know. Deals are deals. It depends on how strong the inspection routines are. Like I said, they were keeping the JCPOA. The only reason the problem with JCPOA was that it sunset, and we decided to single-handedly sunset it without another solution. So, Paul.
So if I
Oh,
just
sorry,
confirm,
Richard, you want to follow up? Go ahead.
yeah, are you saying that one of these sunset agreements obviously is better than no agreement, but I just can't picture a regime like Iran not trying to be being dishonest and not keeping their part of it, and it's about such a massive topic like the survival of Israel. That how do you trust them to be? I know you just gave me the reasons why you think they'll keep their agreement. I guess I just find it hard to understand how a regime like that would even consider playing fair an option.
Again, all we can do, there's nothing you can do to ensure someone's going to keep an agreement other than having strong sanctions if they
Yeah,
don't, and having inspections, no guarantees and anything. Paul.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just a kind of a different question. So Ben Gurion has been closed for I don't know how long now. What has to change for it to open?
Say that again to you. Which
Ben Gurion Airport has been closed for I don't know how many days now.
okay.
What has
Okay.
to change for it to open?
Okay. It isn't closed. Um, It is been reopened at the 2 o'clock today. It was opened again. It's open for, they were planning to have today 24 flights. At the moment, there are going to be only 10 flights today. Israelis are being allowed to leave, but only 50 people on a plane. And they have to agree to leave for 30 days. They can't come back before 30 days. So they have a ticket to come back in 30 days, which is an incentive not to go anywhere unless you really have to. Um, the reality is that Ben Gurion Airport is too good a target. And so the concept is to keep as few planes on the ground as possible. The general view was we were going for 2 planes an hour, landing and taking off. They're trying to turn around the planes in 30 minutes, which is quite a feat in of itself. That's why they're trying to limit the number of people get on board. As anyone knows, it's quicker to get people off a plane than it is to get people on a plane. So by limiting it to 50 people, it's reasonably quick to be able to get everybody on board a plane. Who those 50 people are going to be, that's going to be a whole other question. Um, I don't see opening it up for, large numbers of flights until this is over, to be honest with you. I think the threat of these missiles is too great. I mean, if you look at the damage that one of these missiles does, it doesn't have to land on a plane. All it has to land is in a taxiway or at any sort of area of the airport. First of all, the airport itself, there are safe areas in the airport, but it's limited to how many people can fit into safe areas in the airport. Not to mention, it'll destroy a plane. And these planes are expensive toys, to say the least. So I don't see it happening anytime soon. Uh, the airport's going to remain fairly closed until we end this. It's the problem of living in an island, is what we live
So
in.
that could literally be weeks.
I think it could
Months.
be weeks. We don't know, but it could be weeks. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. I thank you.
Michael Ross wants to
Michael
speak.
Ross, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Michael Ross. Okay. Um, Someone asked me, I thought El Al was canceling all flights indefinitely. El Al is canceling all scheduled flights as opposed to the rescue flights that they're running. The rescue flights are run from specific places and it requires new reservations. Anyone has current reservations on El Al flights through the 26th of June, but I think it'll probably go through through middle of July at least have been canceled. And the question about all the shooting of Gazans during I don't know what to tell you about that. Someone asked that question. I really don't know. People don't, I don't know. There's no way to know. So that's where we stand. I want to thank everyone for joining me. If there are no more questions,
Michael Ross wants to ask a question.
okay, Michael Ross, if you want to ask a question, ask the question.
Just unmute himself.
Okay. Michael, unmute yourself. Okay, I guess not. Okay, Michael, I guess not. What do you make of all the shooting of Gaza? That was the question you've asked, and the thing, and like I said, I don't have an answer, Michael. I don't have an answer of what is going on. It's poorly run. There's no question about it. On the other hand, there seems to be giving out millions of meals, so I don't really know. I think our strategy makes no sense in Gaza, but I don't have enough information at this point. Maybe it's on purpose, but it's far from, it's out of sight now completely, which is a problem. Okay, everybody, once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We'll do this
Thank you,
again in
Mark.
2 weeks.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you. Thank
And
you.
Bring the hostages home.
yes.
Yes.
Bye. Only
Thank
good
you.
news, right? Take
Stay
care,
safe,
everybody.
Mark.
Thank
you.
I'm
you.
Yisrael High.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.